Our guys need to develop a killer instinct right now. Now's the time that we got to be playing our best football.
Welcome into Sports Extra. I'm Andre Johnson. The Baltimore Ravens pissed off Joe Burrow, and he got payback by making history. Plus, both the Dayton Flyers and Wright State Raiders getting to dive headfirst into conference play. Meanwhile, Ohio State and UC getting ready to make bowl game statements. We're going to get to all of that and so much more. But first, we start in Cincinnati. The Bengals locked in a divisional rivalry that would decide the new king of the North. Before the game, the Ravens defensive coordinator said he wasn't planning on buying Joe Burrow a gold jacket anytime soon. A comment Burrow said was a bit unnecessary, but he heard it loud and clear. The other Joe, though, Joe Mixon, he's going to start us off with that touchdown run on 4th and goal. And he gave the ball to a young Buckeyes fan. You love to see it. You love to see this too. Here's Joe Burrow's response to those gold jacket remarks. On a rope to Tyler Boyd, who flips into the end zone. Doesn't stick the landing here, but that's okay. We're still impressed. 68 yards for the score. Joe Burrow set the single-game franchise record for passing yards in a game with 525. That pass just the beginning. In the second, Burrow dumps it down to Jamar Chase. Excuse me, sir. Second floor, please. Chase going up and over the defender, and that sets up Joe to Joe. A few plays later, Burrow to Mixon for his second touchdown of the day. Joey B finished with 4 of them things. Mixon hyping the crowd up, the Who Dey chants raining down on the field at Paul Brown Stadium. But Burrow, he's far from finished. In the second half, he finds T. Higgins on the quick out route. T had a career game as well, $194 and 2 touchdowns. Bengals up 31-14. And right now, you might be thinking, hey, we haven't seen any Ravens highlights yet. And that is not about to change because this was an offensive show of force for the Bengals. There's T. Higgins' second score today, Burrow's fourth. 41-21 your final from Paul Brown Stadium. Plenty of history made tonight. Joe Burrow's 525 yards sets the franchise record for passing yards in the game. We talked about that a little earlier. T. Higgins' 194 yards are a career high for him. And after today, both Higgins and Jamar Chase surpassed 1,000 receiving yards on the season, making the Bengals first team in NFL history with multiple players with 1,000 receiving yards before turning 23. Now, if you're a Ravens fan or even just a Bengals hater, I know what you're thinking. There was no Lamar Jackson. The Ravens were missing this guy and that guy, but hold your horses. Head coach Zach Taylor says that he doesn't want to hear any of that. Those guys that played today, they practice too.
At the end of the day, all those guys have played football for him, and so, they'd all been out there. And that's still the Baltimore Ravens out there playing meaningful football for them. And so our guys shouldn't apologize for 1 second for the performance they went out there and did today. And dang proud of those guys for how they hung in there the full course of the game.
Well, obviously, they had some starters out, but it's the NFL. Everybody's good. I mean, it's the best of the best, right? And we looked at it as, if they were starting the first game, if they've been starting, the whole year, and we just got to go out there and play our game.
So don't look now, but the Bengals now hold the 3 seed in the AFC, 2 games behind Kansas City for that top spot. The good news is, guess who Cincy plays next week? Yeah, Kansas City. And the Bengals say they ain't afraid of no 1 seed.
Our guys just have all the confidence in the world right now, and we're not done yet. We're 4-1 in the division right now, and we need to be better than that this year, quite frankly. So we know how big of a test this Kansas City game is coming for us this weekend. It's far and away the biggest game of the year for us.
Yeah, we're right where we want to be. We knew we had a chance to be in this position in training camp. We knew the kind of team that we had. So you couldn't ask for a better situation right now. We control our destiny.
Show people what we can do. And now that we have seen it, that's our standard now. And hopefully we can keep going and keep this momentum moving into Kansas City next week.
Next week is going to be huge for us. We're going to need it. Hopefully we can have a sellout crowd. And the players, just keep on putting on the show.
And here's a look at what Cincinnati has coming up next. Only 2 more games left in the regular season. After Kansas City, the Bengals close it out with the season battle, the Battle of Ohio, round 2. If the Bengals win out, they'll clinch the division and a home playoff game. Speaking of Cleveland, the Browns, they're playing Aaron Rodgers and the Packers yesterday on Christmas Day. Baker Mayfield back after missing a game on the COVID list, but his first play is all about Nick Chubb punching it in from the 1-yard line and giving the Browns an early lead, one that Aaron Rodgers would just snatch right back. Later in the first, he finds Allen Lazard, who dives towards that pylon. That's a touchdown, but not just any touchdown. That's A-Rod's 443rd touchdown of his career, passing a guy named Brett Favre for the most in Packers history. Later in the first, Baker Mayfield follows that up with a rocket to the wrong team. That one's high and picked off by Chandon Sullivan. So now we go to the fourth quarter. Baker finding Anthony Schwartz in the back of the end zone, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, the Browns are trying to climb back into this thing. They're down 24-22, but this would be the nail in their coffin. Baker Mayfield driving to win the game, and he throws his fourth interception of the game. That's all she wrote. The Browns losing this one 24-22, slowly watching themselves slip out of the playoff picture. Not a great game from Baker Mayfield. It's very difficult to win when your starting quarterback throws 4 interceptions, which leads us to your AFC North standings. The Bengals are the kings of the North after completing the season sweep of the Ravens. They also swept Pittsburgh. And like I mentioned, they're going to have their shot against Cleveland in 2 weeks. Now, part of the reason the Bengals are in that position is because of spectacular play from their superstars. And when you play well, the accolades start rolling in. In this case, we're talking about the Pro Bowl. We start with Jamar Chase, the first-round pick out of LSU, leading the team in catches, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. The season isn't even over yet, but he already holds the Bengals' rookie record in all of those marks. Before the season, people somehow managed to convince themselves that he just couldn't catch anymore. Well, 4 months later, Chase is the 6th Bengals rookie ever to be voted to the Pro Bowl at any position. The last to do it were Andy Dalton and A.J. Green back in 2011. Running back Joe Mixon, he's going to join Chase on that AFC Pro Bowl roster. Right now, he's 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards and 3rd in rushing touchdowns. Mixon's just 2 scores on the ground away from tying the franchise record, set all the way back in 1988 by Ickey Woods. He also has 3 receiving touchdowns on the year, which puts him 1 total touchdown shy of the franchise record set by Carl Pickens in 1995. Defensive end Trey Hendrickson representing the Bengals on the defensive side. He's got 13 sacks this season and at least half a sack in 11 straight games. That's the longest streak in franchise history and the 5th longest in NFL history. 5 Bengals were also voted in as alternatives, just in case somebody gets hurt and can't play for some reason. Headlining that list, quarterback Joe Burrow. He's got 4,165 passing yards and 30 passing touchdowns to 14 interceptions in his first game back from that torn ACL. Also on the list is long snapper Clark Harris, defensive end Sam Hubbard, defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi, and cornerback Mike Hilton. The 2022 Pro Bowl kicks off February 6th from Las Vegas. Head coach Zach Taylor said, quote, "It's a tremendous honor for our players to be recognized among the league's best by their peers, coaches, and fans. Jamar, Trey, and Joe have had terrific seasons, and their contributions both on and off the field have been critical for us all year long. Those 3, as well as our players who were voted as alternates, are major reasons we are in the position to achieve our goals this season." Up next, both the Dayton Flyers and Wright State Raiders getting ready for the most important moment of their season. But they're in a good place heading into conference play when we come back in 2 minutes. You're watching Sports Extra on Dayton 24/7 Now News. Welcome back to Sports Extra. The holiday season serving as a new beginning for the Dayton Flyers. Once their break is over, they're diving headfirst into conference play. It's been an up and down non-conference schedule for the Flyers, who started off about as cold as you can get, dropping 3 games to teams that frankly they had no business losing to. Then they went down to Orlando for the ESPN Events Invitational, and all of a sudden they looked like a brand new team. They won the event, knocking off number 4 Kansas in the process, then came back to Dayton and had their longest winning streak since that magical 2019 season. Since then, they've been up and down, but especially strong on their home court. UD hasn't lost a game at UD Arena since November 20th. And now the Flyers hope to use the lessons they learned in that non-conference schedule to dominate the Atlantic 10.
I'm really confident in our team and what we do and the coaching staff and every players. And I think we need kind of like this break to get away from basketball and be able to refocus on what we really need to focus on. And come back and go straight to work, and then conference play start right away. So it's going to be really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, we're super confident, man. I mean, everybody has 4 days to kind of go home and you know, restart, reset, and we come back and be ready for any time.
You see it, I see it, they know it, you know, so it's just a matter of we have to be better. If we're going to have a chance as we head into conference play to try to compete for a championship, we're going to have to be a lot better.
And getting better has been the theme of the season for the Flyers. After that slow start, the team said they just needed more time to gel and that they were a team without an identity. Now, that's not as much of a problem. Since then, the full court press has become their defensive identity. And on offense, it's all about ball movement, spreading the ball around, and playing unselfish basketball. But head coach Anthony Grant says the Flyers still have some work to do.
I think we got better. I don't think we've reached our ceiling. I think we got a lot of room for growth. I think it's that time where, I think as a team, we have to decide, are we going to hit this thing full speed, as a group, and take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of us. And so on a lot of different fronts, I think it's a choice. I think it's a decision,
After the holiday break, the Flyers tip off their conference schedule against Rhode Island. Then they've got back-to-back games against the two teams that finished 1-2 in last year's Atlantic 10. You've got St. Bonaventure first and then VCU. The good thing about those games, both of them are at home. We talked about how good the Flyers are at home. Then after that, the Flyers take the road to take on George Washington. Time to check in on Wright State. The Raiders coming off their biggest win of the season over NC State. But before we get into the win, let's take a look inside that locker room at their post-game celebration. NC State was the second big Power 5 team the Raiders played this season. The first was Purdue earlier in the year. That was a game Wright State lost 96-52. Head coach Scott Nagy said, frankly, that loss was just embarrassing for his team. Don't look now, though, but after starting the season off 2-7, the Raiders have won 2 straight games. The start of the season was a bit uncharacteristic and slow for this team, but they hope this game can be a springboard heading into Horizon League play.
One good defense. Okay, we're finally starting to get that turned around, and then I think the other thing is our players play with a lot of confidence and played like they actually believed that they were good players and believed we could win the game, and that's what gave us a chance. I mean, it's important because we haven't had a lot to feel good about in terms of the way we played, our schedule, all of those things, and so this was obviously an important win for us to enjoy Christmas. Give us a few days off and then come back and play with a lot of confidence.
Now, the Raiders do already have 2 conference games under their belts, a loss to Cleveland State and a win over Purdue Fort Wayne. But a very interesting part of the Raiders' schedule is coming up. In about 2 months, the Raiders have only played 3 of their 11 games at home. They are 2-1 at the Nutter Center, but coming up, they've got a stretch of 4 straight games in the Nut House. That's the good news. The bad news is after that stretch, they play 5 games in a row on the road. With all of those being conference games, that could be a bit challenging for the Raiders. But their season, it could really come down to whether or not they set the tone over the next 2 weeks at home. Now we go to the women of Wright State. The last time they played, they got their first win of the season, which doubled as the first win of the Kerry Hoffman era. But the one opponent they just can't seem to beat is COVID-19. The Raiders had to cancel their game last week against Indiana because of a positive test in the program. This coming after the team was off for 3 weeks because of a separate COVID outbreak. In that time, they had to forfeit 2 conference games. And with nothing but conference games left on their schedule, the Raiders risk being buried in the Horizon League standings without even being able to step on the court. They've only played 1 game in the last 32 days. The women of UD also won't be playing their next game because of COVID-19. They were set to take on Howard on Wednesday. That game canceled because of a positive test within the Bison's program. The Flyers are good. They're also fresh off a stint in the West Palm Beach tournament, where they won both of their games, and now they're set to tip off their Atlantic 10 schedule on Saturday. The Flyers are 8-3 this season, looking once again like a favorite to come on top of that Atlantic 10. After the break, bowl game mania inching toward its grand finale. How Ohio State and UC are prepping for their big games this week. Next, you're watching Sports Extra. Good evening and welcome back into Sports Extra. Guys, this is a huge week in college football for the state of Ohio. The Buckeyes getting ready for the Rose Bowl and UC prepping to upset the reigning national champions in the first round of the college football playoffs. We start with the Bearcats. You know the saying, to be the best, you gotta beat the best. And the Alabama Crimson Tide, who they'll be taking on this Friday, have been the best team in college football essentially since Nick Saban got there. They're coming off that big championship performance led by Mac Jones and the eventual Heisman winner Devontae Smith. But the Bearcats, they're gonna be looking to topple the Tide. And one thing they don't have to worry about is pressure. This is a team that's been forced to be perfect all season. Even a single loss would have guaranteed that they'd be out of the college football playoffs. But they did what they had to do. They took care of business. They beat who was on the schedule, and now they are the first non-Power 5 team to make it to the playoffs. That run led by quarterback Desmond Ridder. Ridder with nearly 3,200 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. More often than not, he has been the driving force of this offense. As you see him throwing a touchdown pass right there, rolling out to the right. They've also got a beast, a hound, and running back Jerome Ford, who's always going to be able to establish that running game. So we know Alabama's got all the 5-star recruits. We know what the Tide represents when it comes to winning in college football. But the Bearcats have the weapons to win. They've been consistent all year, winning football games. They have played talented teams. They beat Notre Dame and they beat Houston in the AAC championship. So they're going to hope that their ride doesn't end in the first round of the college football playoffs. So now we go to the Buckeyes. Ohio State didn't exactly finish the season how they hoped. The Buckeyes were the number 2 team in the nation, but they allowed that school up north, whose name we're just not going to say, to come in and steal their spot in the college football playoffs. So now they'll be taking on Utah in the Rose Bowl. The Utes coming off a 10-3 season, capped off by a big win in the Pac-12 championship game. Their bread and butter all season has been the ground game, led by Tavion Thomas, who's got over 1,000 yards and 20 rushing touchdowns this season. But the Buckeyes, they have a guy named C.J. Stroud. The freshman quarterback has gone from a guy who looked a bit shaky at times early in the season. He kind of was missing high on a lot of his throws. And fast forward about 3 or 4 months later, and he's a Heisman finalist and one of the best 3 quarterbacks in the nation. Stroud finishing the season with 3,862 yards coming into this bowl game. He's got 38 passing touchdowns to only 5 interceptions. The guys, the most impressive part of this is he's thrown 71% of his passes for completions. That 71% completion rate, wonderful for us freshman quarterbacks, so don't be surprised to see him give the Buckeyes fans a performance to remember on Saturday. Now, sticking with the bowl game theme, the Miami Redhawks taking on North Texas in the Frisco Football Classic last week. Let's get into the action. The Mean Green kicking things off with a mean goal line touchdown. That's by Isaiah Johnson, 7-3 North Texas. But Miami says, anything you can do, I can do better. Kenny Tracy from 8 yards out, he says, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do what you did. Take this thing right up the middle, and I'm going to score. Make that 10-7 Redhawks. Kenny finished with 92 yards and that touchdown. Late in the second, Brett Gabbard rolling right and playing pitch and catch with Kevin Davis, who kind of slipped before that play started, make it 20-14 Redhawks. North Texas looking to snatch the lead right back. Jaquez Warren, he's going to say not on my watch, picking off Austin Awney to close out the second half. And the Redhawks, they would cruise to an easy victory in this one, winning the game 27-14. Head coach Chuck Martin, he's going to get that Gatorade bath as Miami finishes the season 7-6. After the break, ain't no stopping, OB topping. Sound familiar? Well, the former Flyer dug deep into his bag of tricks to put on a show on Christmas Day. That's next. You're watching Sports Extra. Welcome back to Sports Extra. Obi Toppin walked into UD Arena and did some things that Flyers fans had never seen before. And on Christmas Day, he brought that gift of his to the fans in Madison Square Garden. He started off simple in this Christmas game. He started off with the alley-oop slam from Kemba Walker. That's impressive. I'd give it about a 7 or an 8 in the slam dunk contest, but right here, this is an 11. There aren't many people as bold or talented enough to pull off the in-between-the-legs dunk in the middle of a game, but hey, I mean, leave it to Obi, my goodness gracious. Maybe if the Knicks would give the former Flyers some more playing time, he could actually show them that he's really good at basketball too and not just a highlight machine. Obi getting only 16 minutes a game so far this season, scoring about 8.5 points a game. He's got it all on offense. Long, versatile defender, and he can do things like that. But hey, what do I know? Thanks for tuning in.